Hello everyone, today we will see the explanation of the lesson Mijbil the Otter. If we talk about the theme of the lesson Mijbil the Otter talks about the relationship between a master and his pet, and it gives the message that one should be friendly towards the pet and take good care of it, and we keep pets by choice, and if we have one then we treat it as a family member. In this lesson, the author tells that how his life changed after he decided to domesticate an otter after he lost his pet dog. And he takes us through his journey of adjusting, playing, and traveling with Mijbil, the otter, from Iraq to London, and how during this journey he developed an inseparable bond with him. So let's move to part 1. Early in the new year, Early in the new year of 1956, I traveled to southern Iraq. By then, it had crossed my mind that I should like to keep an otter instead of a dog, and that California, ringed by water or stone's throw from its door, would be an eminently suitable spot for this experiment. So here crossed my mind means came into my mind. A stone's throw means a very short distance. Otter is a semi-aquatic fish-eating mammal of a whale family, and with this having elongated body, dense fur, webbed feet. Eminently means highly or very. So in the beginning of 1956, soon after the author's dog passed away, he traveled to southern Iraq, and he was too lonely without a pet but wanted to keep an otter instead of a dog this time, and he thought that keeping an otter at California was a good idea because the otters love water, and as California was surrounded by water which was very close by, and it was a perfect place to try this new idea of domesticating an otter. When I casually mentioned this to a friend, he as casually replied that I had better get one in the Tigris marshes, for there they were as common as mosquitoes and were often tamed by the Arabs. We were going to Basra to the Consulate General to collect and answer our mail from Europe. At the Consulate General, we found that my friend's mail had arrived, but that mine had not. So, as common as mosquitoes means easily found, and tamed is domesticate. So, on sharing his intention of domesticating an otter with a friend, the latter suggested that the author should get one from the marshes along the river Tigris, as otters were very commonly found there and were generally tamed by the Arabs. They had this conversation when the narrator had his friends were going to Basra. Upon reaching there, they discovered that only the friend's mail had arrived. I cabled to England, and when 3 days later nothing had happened, I tried to telephone. The call had to be booked 24 hours in advance. On the first day, the line was out of order. On the second, the exchange was closed for a religious holiday. On the third day, there was another breakdown. My friend left, and I arranged to meet him in a week's time. 5 days later, my mail arrived. Cabled is meaning sent a message by telegraph. That is an old method of communication. Breakdown means mechanical failure. So here author tried connecting to England via telegraph, and when there was no response, tried connecting through a call which demanded to be booked a day in advance, and he could not connect with them because of a holiday and technical glitches for another 3 days. And finally, his friend left, and they both decided to meet after a week. And his mail arrived after waiting for 5 more days. I carried it to my bedroom to read, and there, squatting on the floor, were two Arabs. Beside them lay a sack that squirmed from time to time. They handed me a note from my friend. Here's your otter. So, squatting means crouch or sit one's knees bent, or the back's one's thigh. Squirmed means twisted about. So as soon as the narrator received the mail, he went to the bedroom to read it, and only to find two Arabs men and with a sack, and which was twisted itself again and again, and they handed him a note sent by his friend, which stated that the otter was a gift from him, and the otter was packed in the sack. So let's move to the next part. With the opening of that sack began a phase of my life that has not yet ended, and may for all I know not end before I do. It is in effect a thalrom to otters, an autofixation that I have since found to be shared by most other people who have ever owned one. So here thalrom means being under the control of, that is old fashioned word terminology that is be used, being under the control of. Fixation is a very strong attachment or feeling. So here the author considered domesticating an otter as a beginning of a new phase of his life that is still continuing, and he developed deep affection and a unique bond with the otter that could only be understood by others who have ever owned a otter. The creature that emerged from his sack onto the spacious tiled floor of the consulate bedroom resembled most of all a very small medievally conceived dragon. From the head to the tip of the tail, he was coated with symmetrical pointed scales of mud armor, between whose tips was visible a soft velvet fur like that of a chocolate brown mole, and he shook himself, and I half expected a cloud of dust. But in fact, it was not for another month that I managed to remove the last of the mud and see the otter, as it were, in his true colors. So, the creature that emerged here, medievally conceived means an imagination of the Middle Ages. Okay. So here, as soon as the narrator opened the sack, the otter came out of the tile floor, and he took like a small version of the ancient imaginary creature like dragon, and he was completely covered in mud, and from beneath it small patches of soft velvet fur could be seen, and the fur resembled the skin of a chocolate brown colored mole, and he shook himself to get rid of most of it, but it took another month of continuing cleaning and washing to bring out his actual color. So, Mijbil, as I called the otter, was in fact of a race previously unknown to science, and was at length christened by zoologists Leutrogales perspicillata maxwelli, or Maxwell's otter. For the first 24 hours, Mijbil was neither hostile nor friendly. He was simply aloof and indifferent, choosing to sleep on the floor as far from my bed as possible. The second night, Mijbil came onto my bed in the small hours and remained asleep in the crook of my knees until the servant brought tea in the morning, and during the day he began to lose his apathy and take a much too keen interest in his surroundings. So here, Christian means named, hostile is unfriendly, aloof and indifferent means keeping a distance, apathy is the absence of interest, crook of my knees means soft inside part where you bend your knees. So here the author named his pet Mijbil, or in short, Mij. Mijbil belonged to a race of otters that had been recently discovered by a zoologist um, named, that is, Leutrogale persipillata maxwelli, or was known as Maxwell's otter in a very easy language. It took the otter a little time to open up and get comfortable in his new surroundings, and he was at a distance on the first day, slept with narrator in his bed lying on the crook of his knees, and on the second, and began to know his surrounding better on the third day. I made a body belt for him and took him on a lead to the bathroom, where for half an hour he went wild with joy in the water, plunging and rolling in it, shooting up and down the length of the bathtub underwater and making enough slosh and splash for a hippo. This I was to learn is a characteristic of otters. Every drop of water must be, so to speak, extended and spread about the place. Ball must at once be overturned, or if it will not be overturned, be sat in and splashed in until it overflows. Water must be kept on the move and made to do things when static. It is wasted and provoking. So here, so as to speak means as it were, or we can say that one could say this. Provoking is causing an anger or some other reaction. Plunging is falling or sinking. Splosh is the splashed, and static is the motionless. So here, Gavin made a belt for the otter, just like dogs have, to take on the lead wherever they went. And when he first took the otter into the bathroom, he discovered that Mitch liked playing with water, and he would jump and roll in water like a hippopotamus did. And this was a characteristic of otters, to get um, infuriated with still water, so they played with it and splashed it till the last drop of the bowl or bucket, we can say. Otters like moving water, and when Mijbil saw still water, it seemed that he got angry and would sit in it, splash it, and try to overturn it from the bucket or bowl. So, next paragraph. 2 days later, Mijbil escaped from bedroom. As I entered it and I turned to see his tail disappearing round the bend of the corridor that led to the bathroom. By the time I got there, he was up on the end of the bathtub and fumbling at the chromium taps with his paws, and I watched amazed. In less than a minute, he had turned the tap far enough to produce a trickle of water, and after a moment of two achieved the full flow. He had been lucky to turn the tap the right way, or later occasions he would sometimes screw it up still tighter, chittering with irritation and disappointment at the tap's failure to cooperate. Fumbling means trying to do something in a clumsy manner. Trickle means flow in a small stream. Chittering is making a twittering or chattering sound. Chromium is a hard white metal used to make taps. Soon after the otter became acquainted with the place, he escaped alone to the bathroom and tried to opening the tap with his paws. And surprisingly enough, he managed to open the tap enough to get a trickle of water, and then more to get full flow. Since he started by turning it in the right direction, on other occasion he would twist it tighter by moving it in the wrong direction, and ended up being disappointed when water did not flow from it. Very soon, Midge would follow me without a lead and come to me when I called his name. He spent most of his time in play. He spent hours shuffling a rubber ball round the room like a floor footed soccer player, using all 4 feet to dribble the ball, and he could also throw it with a powerful flick of the neck to a surprising height and distance. But the real play of an otter is when he lies on his back and juggles with small objects between his paws. Marbles were Mid's favorite toys for his pastime, and he would lie on his back, rolling on or more of them up and down his wide, flat belly without ever dropping one to the floor. So, here flick means a quick, light movement. Shuffling means dragging here and there. Dribble means repeated hit on the ball to make it go ahead. Pastime is distraction or entertainment. So here soon the author learned to follow the authors without lead and without that belt, and it used to come to him when he called its name. Midge was very fond of playing, and he would spend most of his time playing with a ball, dragging and pushing it throughout the room and going after it. Otters are generally known to be fond of lying on the back and juggle with the objects between the paws, and similarly Mitch loved engaging himself with marbles and never dropped one on the floor. And he would take two or more marbles and roll them on his white flat stomach. So let's move to the third part. The days passed peacefully at Basra, but I dreaded the prospect of transporting Mitch to England and to California. The British airline to London would not fly animals, so I booked a flight to Paris on another airline. And from there to London, the airline insisted that meat should be packed into the box, not more than 18 inches square, to be carried on the floor at my feet. I had a box made and an hour before we started, and I put Mitch into the box so that he would become accustomed to it and left for a hurried meal. So here accustomed means familiar, dreaded the prospect means was in great fear of something that would happen in the future. So here, after a peaceful time at Basra, it was now time to take Mijbil to England, and the author was anxious even at the thought of traveling with him. And British Airline refused to allow animals along with, and so he booked with another airline, which make arrangement on being carried in a box, which should be in a box and not more than 18 inches square. Um, and it was not a direct flight from Basra to England. They had to first fly to Paris and then to London. Just as the airline demanded, narrators put Midge in a box an hour before so that it got enough time to be comfortable and left for a quick meal. When I returned, there was an appealing spectacle. There was complete silence, and from the box, but from its air holes and chinks around the lid, blood had trickled and dried. I whipped off the lock and tore open the lid, and Midge, exhausted and blood spattered, whimpered and caught at my leg. He had torn the lining of the box to shreds when I removed the last of it so that there were no cutting edges left. And it was just 10 minutes until the time of the flight, and the airport was 5 miles distant. I put the miserable Mitch back into the box, holding down the lid with my hand. So, here, an appealing spectacle means that is appalling spectacle, sorry, means a shocking scene inside the box. Whipped off means quickly took off, and trickled means drip or flow. Shred means pieces. So here, after the meal, narrator faced that he feared the most. The box was still and blood was dripping out of its air holes, and he got panicked and opened the box only to find the inner lining torn by frightened Mitch. And the narrator removed every piece of the sharp metal lining and cleaned the box till the time everything was back in time, and it was only 10 minutes left for the flight to take off. And they had to cover a distance of 5 miles. Gavin placed Midge in the box and closed the lid with his hand, lest he should escape. I sat in the back of the car with the box beside me as the driver tore through the street of Basra like a ricocheting bullet, and the aircraft was waiting to take off. I was rushed through it by infuriated officials. Luckily, the seat booked for me was at the extreme front. I covered the floor around my feet with newspapers, rang for the air hostess, and gave her a parcel of fish. for Midge to keep in a cool place. I took her into my confidence about the event of the last half hour. I have retained the most profound admiration for that air hostess. She was the very queen of my kind. She suggested that I might prefer to have my pet on my knee, and I could have kissed her hand in the depth of my gratitude. But not knowing otters, I was quite unprepared for what followed. So here, ricocheting bullet is the bullet which changes direction after hitting a surface. Infuriated means very angry. Took her into my confidence means here shared with my experience or secret with that air hostess. So here, the narrator cleaned the mess and hurried in the cab. The cab went extremely fast, negotiating the turns like a ricocheting bullet, and he somehow managed to reach just before the flight took off and thereby annoying the officials. He got in his seat and gave Mijbil's food package of fish to the air hostess for refrigeration. And he told her the incident which had delayed them, and she gladly understood while explaining him what to do next. Kevin developed extreme admiration for the air hostess as she was very helpful, and he took her advice and kept the box on his lap, and he felt like kissing her hand as the token of thanks for her help. So let's move to next page. Midge was out of the box in a flash, and he disappeared at high speed down the aircraft. There were squawks and shrieks, and the woman stood up on her seat screaming out, "A rat, a rat." I caught sight of Mid's tail disappearing beneath the legs of a portly white turban Indian diving for it. I missed but found my face covered in curry. "Perhaps," said the air hostess with the most charming smile, "it would be better if you resumed your seat, and I will find the animal and bring it to you." So here portly means stout. As soon as the author opened the box, Midge jumped out of it and disappeared. And there was chaos all around. Passengers were getting scared. Ladies climbed up her chair. When he saw Midge beneath the seat of a white turbaned man, and he attempted to catch Midge and ended up getting his face covered a curry, only to find that Midge had vanished again. And just then the air hostess extended the offer to help find Midge and advised him to go back to his seat. I returned to my seat. I was craning my neck trying to follow the hunt, but when suddenly I heard from my feet a distressed chitter of recognition and welcome, and Midge bounded onto my knee and began to nuzzle my face and my neck. So here craning means stretch out one's body or neck in order to see something. Distressed is troubled, and recognition is identification, acknowledgement. Nuzzle means to rub gently with the nose. Bounded onto means climbed up quickly. So here, on being requested by the air hostess, the narrator came back to his seat and his eyes started looking for Midge, and it was only then he heard some chitter while Midge climbed up his knees to reach his face. Midge had returned. So let's move to the next part. Part 4. After an eventful journey, Maxwell and his otter reached London, where he has a flat. Mitch and I remained in London for nearly a month. He would play for hours with a selection of toys, ping pong balls, marbles, rubber fruit, and a terrapin shell that I had brought back from his native marshes. With the ping pong ball, he invented a game of his own which could keep him engrossed for up to half an hour at a time. A suitcase that I had taken to Iraq had become damaged on the journey home, so that the lid, when closed, remained at a slope from one end to the other. Mitch discovered that if he placed the ball on the high end, it would run down the length of the suitcase and he would dash around to the other end to ambush its arrival, hide from it, crouching to the spring up and take it by surprise, grab it and trot off with it to the high end once more. So here, terrapin shell is the shell of small turtle found in North America, and engrossed means completely interested in. Ambush means to attack suddenly from the hidden position. Crouching means a squat or adopt a position where the knees are bent and the upper body is brought forward and down, typically in order to avoid it, means defend oneself, we can say. Trot off means to leave. They stayed in London for a month while Midge had learned to engross himself with tons of games and he used to play with ping pong balls, marbles, rubber fruit, and a terrapin shell. Ping pong ball kept him engaged for about half an hour. Gavin's suitcase had got damaged on the journey and it had a slope from one end on to the other, and Midge would roll the ball from the higher end towards the lower, then he would rush to the lower end and hide waiting for the ball to reach. He would jump up in the time and surprise the ball, then he would catch the ball and rush once again to the higher end of the suitcase. Very excitingly, he would again hit the ball from the other end. Outside the house, I exercised him on a lead, and precisely as if he had been a dog, Mitch quickly developed certain compulsive habits on these walks in the London streets, like the rituals of children who, on their way to and from school, must place their feet squarely on the center of each paving block, must touch every seventh upright of the iron railings or pass to the outside of every second lamppost. Opposite to my flat was a single storied primary school along whose frontage ran a low wall some 2 feet high. On his way home, but never on his way out, Midge would tug me to his wall, jump on it, jump onto it, and gallop the full length of its 30 yard to the hopeless distraction both of pupils and of staff within. Compulsive means irresistible, and ritual is a religious ceremony. Tug means pull, gallop is run fast. So here Gavin would take Midge for a walk and exercise just like a pet dog, and Midge ran around the street in a particular fashion, just like school kids did. Like children form different habits of placing their feet in the center of each block, and that came their way, or of touching every seventh pole of the railing, crisscrossing out of the street light poles. And there was a primary school with only the ground floor being constructed opposite to the author's flat, and there was a low height wall almost 2 feet high that ran along the school's boundary. On their way back home only, Midge would pull Gavin towards the wall, jump on it, and run on it and on its entire length at the high speed, and he would attract the attention of the students and staff inside the school. So let's move to the next page. It is not, I suppose, in any way strange that the average Londoner should not recognize an otter, but the variety of guesses as to what kind of animal this might be came as a surprise to me. Otters belong to a comparatively small group of animals called mustelines, shared by the badger, mongoose, weasels, stoats, mink, and others. I faced a continuous barrage of conjectural questions, and that sprayed all the musteline that the otter but the otter more random guesses hit on a baby seal and a squirrel. Is that a walrus, mister? Reduced me to giggles, and outside a dog show I heard a hippo, a beaver, a bear, cub, a leopard, one apparently that had changed its spots, and a brontosaur, which was anything but an otter. So here barrage of Conjectural question means the stream of questions filled with guesses, means not even the question like in its true form. So here, as an otter is not a very common animal in London, the author found it strange that the residents were unable to recognize one, and people had their wild guesses as to what midge was. And otters belong to a group of animals called mustelines, shared by the badger, mongoose, weasel, stork, mink, and others. And people also could guess all animals of the group but otter. Most famous guesses were a baby seal or a squirrel. Some guessed that Mijbil was a hippo, beaver, leopard, walrus, and etc. So, but the question was which I awarded the highest score came from a laborer digging a hole in the street. I was still far from him when he laid down his tool, put his hands on his hips, and began to stare. As I drew nearer, I saw his expression of surprise and affront, as though he would have me know as he was not one upon whom to play jokes. I came abreast of him. He spat, glared, and then growled out, "Here, mister, what is that supposed to be?" So here, affront means insult, spat means past tense of spit. The most shocking reply came from a laborer digging a hole who paused working while observing Midge. The man kept his tool aside, placed his hands on his back, and stared at Midge. His expressions of surprise and affront signaled that he would not tolerate any nonsense. He spat, stared at him, and asked the author in a loud voice that what was that supposed to be. So, this is the explanation of the lesson Mijbil the Otter. I hope you guys like the explanation or understand the way I am explaining the lessons. If not, so please let me know in the comment. So, thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe my channel. Bye.